we go. Welcome to Dad Space, podcast for dads by dads. And I have a fellow dad and, hey, a fellow Dave. You know, 2-for-1 deal today. Dave Price is with me today, host of a podcast and a coach, as you can see on the wall behind him if you're watching. And Dave is here today to talk to dads together. I'm so happy to have you here, Dave. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I was just thinking that. I mean, two guys named David. I mean, how much better does it get? But then we've got all this other stuff in common, kids and ministry background. And you and I I don't know how you and I haven't connected already. I mean, we're like this. And so it's all great.
And you were on a podcast recently with a podcast host here up in Canada as well, and not too far from where I am, so that's pretty cool.
And I've scheduled another one. I don't know exactly where he is, but yeah, for some reason, a lot of Canadian fellas and girls, gals, and some in the UK as well. So which I love. I love that. So I love multicultural, multicultural country. I'm all about that.
So tell us right off the bat, tell us about your podcast, Dave.
Sure. So recently started, hasn't been out very long, but it's called Take Back Your Life, which also is the name of my coaching company. My program for husbands and fathers is called Take Back Your Control. And so we're just taking everything back, man. We're just out taking stuff back out there in the world. So, but the point of I have two coaching programs, and my biggest program is for men or women who, who want to either don't know what they want to do or know what they want to do but can't get there. And so we help them set goals and achieve goals in their life. The other program I have is for husbands and fathers who want to stop taking their frustration out on their wives and kids, be more loving, supportive, kinder, that sort of thing. So we just teach folks how to do that. The podcast, the coaching program is all centered around how to identify kind of where your blocks are to getting and achieving what you want to achieve, who you want to be, overcoming that and making that happen.
So Dave, maybe there's someone listening today and they're a coach and they've never considered having a podcast. Talk about the correlation between coaching and having a show. How is this benefiting you?
Well, it benefits everybody. I mean, it benefits me, obviously, because it gets a wider audience for what I do, for my coaching programs, and for what I believe. And I'm not in it just to sign up clients and make money, although certainly that's part of any business. But I believe that the things that I teach, because they completely changed my life, I want as many people to hear them as I possibly can. And so podcasting is a great medium for that. I'm also very active on Facebook, and that's got a big reach. So it helps get people to my business, but it helps the people listening because I believe that they need to hear what I'm saying. The things that I teach completely changed my life. And that's why I love talking about them. And I believe that they can help anybody. So it's a win-win.
So Dave, what are you pulling from your ministry background into your coaching? What kind of things kind of transfer over to your coaching now?
It's funny. I tell people, I've been and still am. I've been in ministry for over 30 years. And I know for those who are watching, they're like, man, dude, you must have started when you were 5. I mean, you look so young. Good gracious.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
So, but no, I've been in ministry for over 30 years. And I tell people all the time, really, I've been life coaching for 30 years. I mean, ministry is life coaching, really. But I've been certified for going on 6 years. But the big thing with me, so I coach anybody and everybody. I mean, I can coach unbelievers, atheists. I don't care who you are. I'll coach you. I can help you. But when I started coaching, the thing that I was really passionate about was there's so much personal growth content and so much coaching that is what I call spiritually generic. It's the universe, or it's whatever God you choose, or, that sort of thing. That's not my belief system. I believe in one true God, the God of the Bible. I believe in the scriptures. I believe in Jesus. And I believe in a very specific spirituality, which is biblical spirituality. And so one thing that I wanted to do when I started coaching was to coach very much from a Christian perspective. Now, my coaching is not sermons. It's not Bible studies. It's not that, but it is consistent with my faith. It's consistent with the Bible. When I talk about God, I talk about God, capital G, Jehovah God. I talk about the Bible. I talk about Jesus. So my ministry and my faith have carried over into my coaching by informing my coaching with what I believe is genuine and true spirituality. Does that make sense? It's very important to me that I not be generic in the spirituality that I talk about. Again, I'm not coaching to convert people, but I don't want to be anti-biblical and anti-Christian either. I want it all to go together.
So it's not a disinfected message that's sterilized and reduced in its quality and its content, right? You know who your audience is and you know how you serve people.
Exactly. And that does a lot of things. And I would say to any coach not to, and I've done this different ways. I would say to any coach, don't be afraid to turn people off. Is as with any business, with your David, with your podcast, we have to be very specific about who it is that we're trying to reach. And as my business coach says, people either need to want to turn us up or turn us off. You are talking to dads. You're talking to dads. You're not talking to moms or single people or whatever. Could they get value from what you do? Sure. But you're going to get the most traction and the most reach and make the most impact when every time you turn on your microphone, you keep in mind exactly who you're talking to, and that's dad.
Right.
It's not non-dads. So anyway, that's just something I've learned along the way.
Turn us up or turn us off.
I love that. I love that. Yeah.
That's going to be, I think that's the title of our episode right there, Dave. I love that. So, okay, you mentioned about helping husbands and dads stop taking frustrations out on our families. Where does the frustration start that we're taking out on our family? Where does it begin?
Well, I think it can begin in a lot of places. With me, it began with the loss of my dad. I was 7. He was 44 when he had a heart attack. Yeah, he had a heart attack at work, died at the hospital. And that's where it began for me. And so that began my go-to excuse. That began the reason for my dysfunction and failure and mediocrity in everything that I did. And so the more that I didn't try, my main goal in life was to try to get by with as little effort as possible. And I was miserable. I hated myself. I was about 100 pounds overweight. And I was just miserable in myself. And so because I was miserable, then naturally I was going to take that out on people around me. You can't be that unhappy and not take it out on people around you. It's like a bucket full of water. When you bump into it, what's in it's going to slosh out on you. And what sloshed out on people was my anger and frustration. Now, I was able to hide that with most people that I dealt with, but then when I got home, it would come out. I had a very short temper. And so my wife would often say to me, did you use up all your niceness on everybody else and you got none left for me? And so that's exactly what I was doing. I was able to keep a lid on it out in the world. But when I got home, I was short-tempered. And it wasn't just like all the time. And I was never physically abusive. And it's not like I was just never pleasant to be around. I did a lot of good things. But when I was triggered, the yelling, the shutting down, the slamming, the stomping, the insults, the name calling. So sorry to be so long with the answer, but my anger with my family came from my own anger within myself, and I guess it always does.
So I saw something like this in my life too, Dave, where we're not rich by any means in our home. We have a sustainable living, but it's not easy. And we work hard as parents to bring home and supply for our family, and little things that seem to add up. So I can remember when my youngest son was younger and he was frustrated at his older brother. And for some reason, he decided to kick a hole in the bathroom door. And in that moment, he was showing frustration to his older brother for how he was being treated, but he took it out on my home. And now I, who I don't have any extra money for myself. Now I have to pay for this repair that came out of anger. And in that moment, I was not pleasant to both of them because now they've cost me money, right? And I don't have it. And in that moment, I felt very embarrassed at my reaction because in that moment, what I was telling my kids was that door is more important than you.
Yeah.
And that was a sobering moment for me to review and play that tape back over and over and over because out of frustration, I reacted. And that scared me.
Yeah.
Really, really scared me. And I didn't know where it came from. So I like that you can share that and you can put that into terms that we understand. Yeah. Is where maybe some of that frustration can come from.
Oh, absolutely. And, we, like you said, I mean, we dads, husbands, we go to work, we work hard, we work long hours, we work with unpleasant people. We put up with complaints and criticisms. A lot of us are out of shape. We're overweight. We're not getting enough sleep. We don't drink enough water. We're eating junk food. And so our energy is low. Our frustration is high. A lot of us are dissatisfied with things like the government or the economy or the state of society. And so, we're piling on all of these stresses and frustrations. And if we don't know how to deal with them, it's going to come out in some explosive way, either passive aggression, shutting down, that sort of thing, or explosive aggression, which is even scarier.
Right.
And so we've got all this stuff that we don't know how to handle and we don't know what to do with it. And so it comes out against our families. And as you said, it is frightening and we should be afraid. And that fear should motivate us to do something about it.
Well, yeah. And again, it felt so surreal because I'm a pretty even keeled guy, I would say. Normally, I don't really have a lot of highs. I don't have a lot of lows. Yeah. I'm just kind of, and the other thing I hear you saying is shutting down. And I think as men with our partners, that seems to be something we hear quite often is that when things get rough or the conversation goes in that direction where we just feel our natural recourse is to back away or shut down or end the conversation or whatever. And our partner's looking for help in that moment, not us to disengage, right? Think of a standard transmission car, right? You got to be in gear. If you're in neutral, you're revving an engine, but you're not going anywhere. So you got to be in gear and you got to find the right gear for me. So I love driving standard for that as a visual.
Yeah.
But if I'm in the wrong gear and I'm on the highway, my car's going to blow up, right?
Absolutely.
And I think for us as dads, we got to find the right gear.
Yeah.
And get out of neutral.
Yeah.
Really get out of neutral in those relationships.
No, I love that. And that's exactly right. That's such a great way to put that. As men, normally we don't like to talk about our emotions. Everybody knows that. We don't like to talk about our emotions. We don't like to get into our feelings. We're not real comfortable dealing with our spouse's feelings or our kids' feelings. We'd rather fix the problem and dispense with the fluff, But for me, the shutting down was also a lot about control. I would shut down and stay shut down until my wife she'd had enough and she would come to me and want to make up and want to fix things and want to restore the relationship. And so then I felt like I won, and I had asserted my control. And the next time that she thought about, going against me, she might think twice because she didn't want me to shut down. And that was my process. And you can just hear how sick, how toxic, how twisted that is. But when you don't know even what's going on in your own brain, when you don't know how thoughts work, how the brain works, the mind works, when you don't know those things, you don't know how to even begin to address it. And too often, a lot of times, until you're like I was, at a point of complete and utter desperation, completely at the lowest point I've ever been in my life, which is saying something. A lot of times that's what it takes for us to get help. Unfortunately, for a lot of us, though, what that looks like is our spouse walks out and takes the kids. We're served with papers. we end up in jail because of physical abuse or whatever. And we don't want to let it get to that point. We want to address it, and I get a lot of men contact me about my coaching program for husbands and dads, and they talk about it, they think about it, and then they don't do it. And the reason they don't do it is because they haven't reached a crisis moment yet. But very often a crisis moment is way too far gone. And, you can fix yourself at that point, but you may not be able to fix your marriage.
So around community for dads, that's part 2 of why I created Dad Space, is I wanted to be able to give community to dads beyond a podcast episode so we can do life together. We can have these conversations. We can talk about this stuff together as men and learn from each other. It's one thing to hear an episode, but it's another thing to actually sit down with somebody, even if it's like this, and just kind of talk through stuff. How do you kind of work with your community through your coaching? What is it like to spend time with you, and kind of to walk us through that? If I was to sign up today, what would it look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the first thing we would do would be we teach 4 pillars of personal success. And so the first thing would be to address the issue of personal responsibility. So we're going to take 100% responsibility for our life and everything in it. That doesn't mean that we're to blame for everything. We don't even use the word blame in our program. It means that your life is what it is right now, and you can deny it, fight it, resist it, hate it, but it is what it is. And so you've got to take responsibility for your personal response to that and how you deal with that. So what we teach is for our clients to go through and answer 4 questions. And the 4 questions are: who are you blaming? What are your excuses? What are you waiting for? And what are you complaining about? And to get really deep with those questions, because what that's going to do is to dig out how you're not taking responsibility. So my marriage is junky because my wife is a nag, right? Maybe that's or my family is unhappy because my kids are rebellious, or my marriage is in the tank because we don't have enough money. All of those things are blaming and excuse making. And so they may be real. It may be reality that you don't make enough money. But the question is, what are you going to do about it to create a happier family, even though that's the case? And so the first thing we do is establish taking responsibility. We also address personal growth. You need to have personal growth habits. We're big on habit in our program. And so we're going to get you reading. We're going to get you eating better, sleeping better, those kinds of things. And we're just going to address all of that stuff. So that's where we would start, David, is with you taking 100% responsibility. What do I need to do? I can't fix my wife. I can't fix my kids. I can't fix my in-laws, but I can work on me, right? So I don't even talk to men about what their wife is doing, what their kids are. We're not even going to have that conversation. I don't care what your wife and kids are doing. I can't do anything about them, but I can help you get better. And that's where we're going to start. So that's the beginning of it. And without that, that's where it started with me. And without that foundational piece, nothing works. Nothing is going to get better without that piece. So we really drill down on that and make sure that that's in place.
Do you think as dads, we're a little misguided then, or misfocused in the fact that we always want to fix everybody else and be the person to help facilitate change for our family, but not looking inward to ourselves? Are we looking in the wrong area?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, anytime, David, and I believe that anytime that we're looking at another person and trying to figure out what we need to do to get them to change, we're whittling on the wrong end of the stick, as old folks used to say where I'm from in Kentucky, here in the States. You can't change anybody. You can't fix anybody. You cannot move the needle on another person, not 1 single centimeter. And so that's what I was doing, hoping my wife would get it together, my kids would get it together, and blaming them and all of that. But no, you can't do anything about anybody. The only thing you can do is focus on yourself and the way that you deal with other people as they are. And so that's all we talk about in our program. Absolutely, we're focused on the wrong thing, 100%.
So that was, when you were talking earlier, what popped in my mind was a biblical parable about the prodigal son, where in that context of that story, for those who don't know, two kids, one kid takes his inheritance and leaves and goes away from home and blows it and does all kinds of stuff. And one kid stays home. And so often we focus in that story about the two kids and their reaction in that situation, but we don't talk about the dad's reaction. Yeah. And in that, there was a celebration because the one child that left with everything and blew it all came back with nothing, back home. And you would think that the father would be upset, but instead threw a party because this child was once dead, but now alive again to that father. What kind of things do you think, when you think about that story yourself, that could be applicable to dads today? That this should be your reaction when maybe your kids go in a pathway. Yeah. Again, you talked about you can't fix your kids. Yeah. If your kids go down a path that's not your chosen path for them, I'm living this right now, Dave. So I'm saying this firsthand experience. Your kids go down a path that is not what you wanted or dreamt for them when they were small. Yeah. And you don't want them to be dead to you in the sense that they've gone down this path and you feel like they're never coming back. There could be a day when they come back, right? Mm-hmm. What kind of lessons have you learned about the prodigal son and the father in that story?
Well, full disclosure, we also have this situation in our family. I have 3 grown children, and one of my children is currently on a path that I would not have chosen for him, and getting better, doing better with that, making some progress, I think, coming around to a degree, but still not exactly where I would want him to be, but I'm not where God wants me to be either all the time. So I try to have patience. But several things, David, and I'm really happy you brought that up because I think it's very instructive. First of all, I wouldn't have given them the money. First of all, he's not getting my money. Now, I know Jesus was telling the story in a certain way to make a point, but right. They're not getting my money like that, just so you know. No. But I think a couple of things. First of all, the father did not chase after him. Right. The story indicates that the family knew exactly what the son was doing. When the son came back, the older brother says, your other son has devoured his living with prostitutes. They knew exactly where he was and what he was doing and how he was living. They knew when he was blowing it. They knew when he was out of it, and they knew when he was in the pig pen. They knew where he was. What did they not do? They did not go after him. They did not try to talk him into coming back. They did not kidnap him and force him to return. Wow. They didn't do any of that. They knew exactly where he was. And I believe that the part of the point Jesus is making is this is what God allows us to do, David. And I'll be honest with you, I've been studying the Bible my whole life, but I learned more about God by having children than I ever learned in the years before that. And I know that, David, that you know what I mean, and dads will know what I mean by that. I knew what it means to love a child who's breaking your heart. I knew what it means to love a child who is challenging and you keep working with them and you don't give up on them, etc. So, but the father did not go after his son and try to fix him. The son went away and the father allowed it. Why? Because he knew he couldn't fix him. But he left the door open. And he did not cut him off. Now, I do believe, David, that there are times when that becomes necessary. There are times when a parent can be an enabler, when a parent can be codependent, and I'm no mental health expert, but there are times when a parent can do more harm than good by keeping the relationship intact. And that there sometimes does have to be a time when we cut the relationship off. I fully believe that in rare instances. But as long as you can, you keep the door open, you allow them to return. And then when they do, you just flat out welcome them back and restore them back to where they were. I love what Paul says in 2 Corinthians. He says that there had been a man that the church had to exclude from fellowship because of his lifestyle. the man had come back, but the church was reluctant to accept him back. And Paul says you need to reaffirm your love for him. Otherwise, we're going to lose him forever. And that can happen with kids when we don't incorporate them back fully enough. So to me, what I learned from that is you can't chase after people and fix them. You got to let them do their thing. You can't enable them, but you don't have to try to fix them either. But when they're willing to come back and try to get it right, then you need to welcome them back. You know, that son may have come back with addiction problems. He may have come back with a sexual disease. He may have come back with all kinds of issues. The father didn't give him a questionnaire. He gave him a roll of meal. And so,
Dave, I love that.
Yeah, so he just welcomed him back. So yeah, David, I'm so happy you brought that up because I think it's so instructive on fathering. I think it's a beautiful story.
Yeah, and the one thing that I took away from it too was daily the father would look off to the horizon to where his son went.
Yeah, you saw him coming.
He would watch.
Yeah,
he would watch every day.
Yeah,
right. And then one day there was somebody walking that way, and not only did he wait for his son to he ran to his son.
I love that.
Right. You love it, right? And that's what a great story about our relationship with God as well.
Absolutely.
Right? He didn't wait for us to come to him. He ran to us.
Absolutely.
There's actually a song from 80s and 90s somewhere back there by a guy named Benny Hester, and it's called When God Ran.
Yeah.
It's an amazing song.
Yeah.
That just encapsulates our conversation.
I know the song. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's an amazing song. So I'll put a link to that in the show notes if anybody's interested in watching that. But again, I didn't really know we would go down this path, but Dave, what I love that you're open and honest and sharing a little bit from your point of view. And what I think there's this misnomer that someone in ministry or coaching has it all together in a nice, tidy little package with a bow on top. And you're on the mountain looking down on us pilgrims who are trying to climb the hill, and you're like, come on, it's not that hard. It's easy. Look what I did. But you can honestly say, listen, I'm a real person and I'm struggling.
Oh, my land.
Right?
Oh, my land.
The kid had problems and he left, but I have my own problems to deal with.
All the time.
So you're telling me, Dave, you're shattering a myth here that someone in ministry and somebody serving is not perfect. Is that what you're trying to say right now?
Well, David, I've tried to be subtle about it, but yeah, that's kind of what I'm trying to get across. Yeah, for sure. One of my most poignant, I guess, memories is I've been preaching for a very long time, and between Sunday school and the church service, I had taught the Sunday school class, and then I was about to get into the pulpit, and I remember going into one of the bathrooms and locking the door and having a complete breakdown, bawling my eyes out, sobbing, heaving, just broken down. And the reason that picture is so poignant to me is because there I was, the preacher, in my suit, about to deliver the sermon, having a breakdown. And that picture is, as you said, and I'm so happy that you point this out, is so instructive because I didn't have it all together. I don't have it all together. But David, I think that the struggles that we have is the power behind our communication of what works. Jesus is an effective high priest because he's been tempted in all things like we are, yet without sin for him, but he knows what it's like to be tempted. He knows what it's like to suffer. He learned obedience, Hebrews 5, he learned obedience from the things that he suffered. So the Bible says in Hebrews 4 that we can come to him and find grace to help in time of need, because he's been where we are. And what I tell people all the time about my programs is I only teach what I did. I only teach what worked for me. That's a big deal to me. Somebody asked me today, what separates you from other coaches? And I'm not a competitor. I don't compete with anybody. There's enough for all of us. But I think one thing that differentiates me is every single thing I teach without fail in my programs is what I did. And I know that it works And I needed it, and I still need it because I am a faulty, defective, struggling, weak human being. But I believe that that's the power behind my message. I get it. I'm not perfect. I did not go to coaching school because I thought coaching would make me a lot of money. I went to coaching school because I thought it would help me tell people what worked for me better. And that's, yeah. So I'm glad you pointed that out. There's no perfection, or there's nothing here that's got it all together by any means.
And I think that's one thing that dads fall prey to, is feeling that they have to have it all together.
Oh yeah.
In the same way you talked about in ministry.
Yeah.
Right? You are in effect a minister and a leader in your home. And that perception that dad has to have it all together at all times, be supportive husband, loving father, community member, and somehow balance yourself.
Yeah.
Right? All at the same time.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
And I feel that we are so ill prepared when we walk down the hallway for the first time into that room and a new life is handed to us in this blanket. And you're like, there's no owner's manual. I have no idea what I'm doing. And I'm going to walk out of the hospital and nobody's going to follow me home.
Yeah.
Like, nobody's going to make sure
Yeah.
that I'm doing it right. They're like, bye, have a good day. You're like, what do I do with this thing? Right?
Yeah.
And I know when I was a young dad, I failed forward so much that I felt like I was picking myself up off the floor every day because I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And there was nobody there to kind of say, listen, here's some things that I've learned, and here's a community to be a part of, and let's help each other. Let's not try to be on our own little island as men,
Yeah.
trying to just figure it out ourselves, making our own mistakes. There's a guy 2 doors down from us. He's making the same mistakes.
Yeah.
And we don't even talk to our neighbors.
Yeah.
So how do we build community,
Wow.
Dave? What do we do?
Man, David, I love that so much. There are two things that you said, and I want to hit the first one. So first of all, guys, we don't like admitting we're wrong. We like having all the answers. And I think that being vulnerable and being honest with our wives and our children goes so much farther than coming off like you never make a mistake. So if I mess up with my kids, instead of holding the line and acting like I did the wrong thing or the right thing, you just don't understand it. I was right. You were wrong. I'm not going, even when I know I'm wrong, that is so far the worst thing to do. Just own it and say, I was wrong. The way I treated you, my decision was wrong. That rule was wrong. And I'm sorry, goes a million miles farther than trying to come off like the dad that has it all together. But yeah, building community is huge. And that's one thing that I love. I have 2 group coaching programs. And so a group is a powerful thing. And that's why I do group, because it's so powerful. Obviously, church is a great place to find people with, assuming that whoever the different people are listening, that's their value system. But that's a great place to find, even if it isn't your value system, it's a great place to find great people in church, even if you're not a believer. But church is part of it. I have found that I just stepped down from coaching youth and school sports for over 20 years. Being involved in your child's sports, not just dropping them off, but coaching. Or if you can't coach, you can volunteer. You can do various things, be on the board, work the concession stand. And so sports is a great place to get connected with other dads. All sorts of dad things, hunting clubs, and all sorts of ways that you can do that. Facebook groups is another way that you can do that. But I think more than anything, is just, and we teach in my programs, we teach particular ways to do this, but training your brain to be on the lookout for men with shared values who will build you up. Too many of us have our friend group by default. It's the people that just fall into our lives. Worst possible way to build a friend group. Instead of being intentional. And so getting clear on the kind of man that you want to be a part of your group. What do you want that to look like? What sort of man do you want that to be? And then training your brain to look out for those people that will attract those people into your life almost automatically, magically almost. But if you're looking for it, you're going to attract it into your life. And so there's lots of ways to do that. But I think the big thing is when we find men with shared values, the big thing is allowing ourselves to dismantle the walls that we have between us. Stop letting your friendships just be about sports and playing golf together and barbecuing together. Start talking about real things. Start being vulnerable a little bit at a time. Open up a little bit and just say, hey, I kind of been dealing with this struggle with my kids. Is this ever something that comes up for you? Or just maybe, any advice on that? Opening up a little bit and going deeper rather than these really shallow relationships, right? We have buddies, but we don't have friends who we're sharing things with. Again, it goes back to personal responsibility. It is in my power to begin to open up to the men around me and allow them in so that we can help these things together. But as long as we stay closed off, it's never going to work.
Dave, can you just block off the rest of your week for me? Because I'm enjoying this conversation so much. I don't know, what's the longest you've podcasted for? Because I think I'd like to break the record.
Marathon podcast.
Come on. And the listeners are like, yes, keep going. I love it. Dave, what else have we not touched on that's really coming to light in our conversation from your perspective? I don't want to just think that I have all the right questions in this chat, because I think there's more to this from your perspective. What else are you feeling?
Yeah, they're definitely. And thankfully, David, I believe you and I are scheduled to get together again and talk again. And I'm totally looking forward to that. And we can get into some more of that stuff. I guess the main thing, David, is that when I was at my worst, which was like a 30-year period, but when I was at my worst, I felt helpless. I felt like that there was no hope for me, that the guys who had it together had something that I didn't have. A lot of them had dads. That was a lot of it. They had the benefit of a dad growing up, which I didn't have. And so they had the advantage. Because I lost my dad, I never have felt adequate around men. In any group of men, I always feel like the least manly, the least masculine, the least capable. In any group of men of any type, I always feel like the weakest and the worst.
Wow.
So I always felt like that other men had something that you just got or didn't get that I didn't get. And so there was no hope for me. So I didn't try to do anything because it was hopeless. So I guess the main thing I like to communicate to all people, but for your audience, the main thing I like to communicate to men is that there is nothing about you that is deficient, defective, or missing that keeps you from becoming what you can be if you'll get the right help, guidance, and direction. You feel like you can't do it, but you can. You're made in the image of God. The image of God imbues you with unbelievable power. If you are a Christian, you are indwelt by the Holy Spirit. Now you've got even more power. There is nothing that you cannot do with making the decision and the commitment, taking responsibility, and getting help. because frankly, you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know where to start. And somebody's got to help get you started.
Yeah.
It's not helpless. It's not hopeless. You can do it. Don't give up. To me, that's the biggest thing, because that's where I was for a long time. And it's such a horrible feeling. And it's a place of complete darkness. You can get there. Reach out and ask for help.
Dave, our conversation has been so helpful to me personally.
Me
I want
too.
to thank you because you've unpacked some stuff for me that I've been ruminating on for a while now, and I haven't had anyone to have this conversation with. So I appreciate the fact that you are so open to talk about this stuff. You've helped me beyond what you know, just so you know. So, and I'm hoping that this translates well to a listener that's here with us, and that our conversation, whether you have a belief background or not, there's something in here for you in this conversation.
100%.
And I want to acknowledge them as well for being part of this. Dave, we are going to do a round 2 together, and I'm, again, thrilled that we have the opportunity to do that. But before we jump to that in the future, where can everybody connect with you, Dave? Let's do all that as well.
So first of all, David, thank you for what you're doing. I know it's customary at the end of a podcast for everybody to thank everybody and tell each other how awesome they are and all that. But I really want to pause for a moment and really, really be genuine, David. I really mean what I'm saying. What you're doing is beyond needed. It's beyond crucial and essential. What you're doing is the most important work a person can do. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for what you're doing. I love your spirit, your humility, your heart. Such a phenomenal human being, David. I'm so happy to be connected to you. I want to help you, support you, promote you however I can. So as far as I'm concerned, folks can find me on my Facebook page. My name is David Price. I'm in Morehead City, North Carolina. I tell folks, if you go to Facebook, look up David Price. The first guy that comes up is just a super amazing, devilishly handsome individual. I'm the guy. I'm the guy right under him. But I'm David Price in Morehead City. You can email me at david@davidpricecoachinggroup.com. And hopefully by the time this gets out, David, I will have my website live. And I'm going to put the address out. The address is Take Back YL. Take Back and the letters YL. For Take Back Your Life, takebackyl.com, and you can connect with me there as well. And I'd love to help anybody however I can. So reach out, love to talk.
If you're looking for a coach that's got a great spirit and a great a story to help you in your journey as a dad, as a person on a journey, I present to you Dave Price. Dave, thank you so much for being part of the podcast.
Love you, brother. Love you. Appreciate it.
I'm looking forward to round 2. It's going to be really, really good.
Can't wait, brother.
Awesome. Everyone, please go check out the show notes. All the links we talked about are all there, and I'd love for you to go check that out and go give Dave some love, and check out his amazing podcast as well. Like, subscribe, follow, share it with another dad, another person that could use these podcasts. Dave, thanks for being part of this.
Thank you, brother.
Thanks for listening to Dad Space today. Go check us out on all of our social media, YouTube, all that great stuff. You can find us as Dad Space Podcast. Real simple. Dad Space Podcast, whether you're on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, even YouTube. Email us, dadspacepodcast@gmail.com. We're always looking for great guests to come on the podcast. If you have any feedback for us, let us know here at Dad Space. Looking forward to connecting with you on the next episode, right here of Dad Space. Follow us on your podcast app for more. Cheers. To you, Dad. Thank you.